Everybody, welcome to the Artist Series. This is so fantastic to have this opportunity to bring you and to deliver the message from so many great people that are involved in the music industry. And today I am so excited. From the band Herman's Hermit. This is fantastic. We have got Peter Noone. Thank you so much for joining me, Peter.
Hey, Dom, nice to see you. I love seeing all those drums around you. I'm a big fan of drummers, as probably we will find out over the next hour. It's always been about drummers for me.
Well, I'll tell you something. Peter, you have got quite a story that is so exciting and just so riveting, and how young you were when you got involved with the band and all that you've done. So please tell me first, how did music first enter your life? What got you fired up about music?
My dad was in a brass band, a lot of brass players in it. He was a trombone player, and the Bee Gees' dad was the trumpet player, and my uncle Lawrence was another trumpet player in the band, and they were in a band, and they basically copied American music because that's all big bands did. My father's favorite was Woody Herman and the Thundering Herd, but his brother liked that clarinet player guy. So everything that happened to me as a kid that I remember always had music in it. My grandfather was the organist at the church. My grandmother was the choir mistress. She used to be able to call it choir mistress then because she was a miss. She was a miss and she was a choir mistress. My Auntie Mary could play Fats Waller. And every time somebody died or was christened or a baptism or a wedding or whatever happened, we would go into this room called the parlor at my grandparents' house, and everybody had to play a musical instrument. And they weren't necessarily sad songs because in those days, if there was a dead auntie in the room, it didn't stop you singing, My Old Man's a Dustman. So it was always music all around. And my father decided that I needed to go to a school of music because it wasn't good enough to just be able to be interested in popular music, that I needed to understand theory. And he sent me to a place called Manchester School of Music, where I was instantly outnumbered by people with far more knowledge of music than I did. They were all sort of Vivaldi and German music from the 18th century. One day I looked through the window. There were all these little rooms where people would go in, and I was doing scales. They had me doing scales, on piano scales. And I quite enjoyed that because I was left on my own, and, I was working my way up to Fats Waller, basically. I'd got myself up to What Did I Say by the Jerry Lee Lewis version. And I looked through this window, and I saw these musicians, all 22 years old, kind of university student looking guys, and they were all laughing. And I go, what's going on in that other room? Obviously it's much more fun in that other room. And they had a thing called a guitar. And I went in there and I said, what's that? And they said, oh, this is like a guitar, And look at this, because they knew I was a musician. They said, if you can bar an A chord, or, you can bar a G chord and an A chord and a D chord, you can play every Chuck Berry song that he ever wrote. And you just give it a little with your little finger. So I set about that and I go, wow, that is incredible. Isn't it amazing, I said to myself, how simple some music that I enjoy is compared to all this Vivaldi stuff that has got magic minor ninths and 11ths and 15th. I could just be like Chuck Berry, or better still, some kid the next time I went there, he's playing and he goes, you can play Buddy Holly songs with open chords. You just need A, D, and E like this. And I went, well, there you go. There's my future. I'm going to not go out of my grandmother's parlor, but I'm going to be able to play songs that are fun and joyful and basically simple and romantic. It didn't need Lotus Blume ansteigt to make my dramatic point. I could just say, my heart is beating for you, and people would get the same message. So if you look at all the people from that period, like John Lennon and Paul McCartney and Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones and any one of them, they all have a similar experience. They were playing music for fun. What happened was I got a band, and the audition piece for the band was Sheila by Tommy Rowe. Because if you could play Sheila from Tommy Rowe, it meant you'd rehearsed. And we also had a thing, because we'd been at Manchester School of Music, you had to be able to tune your kit as well. So otherwise, you couldn't be in the band. So it was a very simple process to audition a drummer, but it had all the right, it didn't matter if you were a good drummer, if you couldn't tune up and you couldn't play, in time. Time was not as important as being able to play the lick.
What a different time that was. But what's interesting enough, at the school, you went on to win the Outstanding Young Musicians Award.
No one ever can figure that one out. I think it was because I was the youngest person who was inspired by the whole thing. Somebody once said it, a lot of people want to be musicians who don't.
Yeah.
And there you go. I was a musician who wanted to be a musician, and I did. Lots of people say, I want to be a drummer, but they don't.
Yeah.
They don't really want to be a drummer, because if you really want to be a drummer, you don't do anything else. If you really want to be a singer, you have to work at it a lot harder than just in your grandmother's parlor.
Boy, that is absolutely correct. With the commitment that is needed to be taken, you obviously were starting to get involved with music deeply, because, you went on between a singer, songwriter, guitarist, pianist, actor. You ended up really widening your scope of what you wanted to do.
I know that nothing is easy. Here's my persistent thing. I left Herman's Hermits because so many things were being offered to me that I couldn't do because I was in a group, and I needed to be a solo artist, and I needed to go. So I left because I thought, I want to go on Broadway and be a song and dance man. And I auditioned for shows on Broadway because they'd been offered to me because I was Herman from Herman's Hermits. Yeah. And they were offering me all these shows. But when I showed up the audition, I found out one little thing was missing: talent. I wasn't able to dance, and I wasn't able to dance and sing at the same time. I was able to stand at the front of the band and tell the driver what time to get the gear and where the gig was. All that stuff I was really good at, but I didn't have any talent. And I thought, well, this isn't easy. I better go and take lessons. And, it took me 10 years of taking lessons to get a gig. And I worked and worked and worked and worked. And one day somebody asked me to audition for something. And I showed up at the audition thinking, not a chance I'll get this because I don't have enough talent. And lo and behold, I got the gig. And they sent me a singing teacher, which I thought, excuse me, I've sold 60 million records. Perhaps I don't need a singing teacher now. Well, they got me this singing teacher, and I was in a room with Belushi, and we both smoked. He was in the same musical, and he smoked, and I was kind of nonchalant about it. But, after each lesson, I became a better singer. So she said to me, look, this is the way it works. Imagine you working for Tommy Lasorda, who was a manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and this was in Los Angeles. Imagine you're working for Tommy Lasorda, and you're at the picture, and he brings you out. Are you going to start pitching your fastball before you warmed up? Yeah. I go, well, no, I'd probably warm up first if I ever get the gig. And she said, well, it's the same with singing. You have to think of it as an athlete. You've got to be an athlete, and she started naming people who I didn't think of as athletes. She says, like Ginger Baker. You don't think he just sits there behind the drums and plays for 2 hours without being an athlete, do you? I go, oh, yeah. You think Mick Jagger can run around for 90 minutes on the stage and sing all those songs if he's not an athlete? First of all, you need to decide whether you want to be an athlete before you get going on this stuff. So, well, I'll give it a shot. So she said, well, being an athlete requires this 45 minutes every day. When you get out, you got to do these exercises. These are called warm-ups. And before you sing, you got to do these. And these are 75 minutes. I go, oh, my God, I'm never going to have any time. And since then, and I can say the same for Mick Jagger, I can't say the same for Belushi. Since then, we became much better singers just from, no matter how old we are, we got better chops.
Well, this is so great for everyone to hear. You know, the audience that we have, Peter, really kind of listens carefully and they're so intrigued. But a couple of things happen now. Your perseverance and your drive really is evident in just what you're telling us. But the key thing is you were only 15 when you ended up joining Herman's Hermits, right?
Herman's Hermits was the end of a period. You know, I was in a band called the Cyclones where I was the guitar player. Right. And one day when I think we were 12 or 13, and one day while I was playing the guitar solo, a very good guitar player walked over to me and said, "Why don't you be the lead singer in this band?" Meaning, you're never going to be the lead guitar player in this band. So if you want to be the lead of anything, try singing. And that was, he did me a big favor because I probably would never have been as good as Jimmy Page because I didn't have 9 hours a day like he did. I still was interested in girls and soccer and cricket and all that. And Jimmy Page wasn't interested in any of that. Anyone says, "How did Jimmy Page get that good so quickly?" I said, "Well, he never went out. He never had a date. He never went to played soccer. He was always in his mum's upstairs at his mum's house doing scales, G scales. That's how he got that bit good. So I will never be that good. So I better be the lead singer." So I became the lead singer, and bit by bit, that turned into Herman's Hermits. But I will say, in the 2 years before we became Herman's Hermits, we were the hardest working band in the whole of England because we didn't have all those assets that bands who were 20 years old. We had to get a van and we had to drive all night, and I was too young to drive, but I was the only one who was sober. And over the 2 years, what happens, and it's a great, I always say it to anybody who wants a band, don't make it until you've spent a lot of times together, because then you can get rid of the guy who's got gas. You can get rid of the guy who can't handle his booze. You can get rid of the guy who likes girls who are too young to be out without their mom. Get rid of all them. And by the time Herman's Hermits made it, we had the perfect operation. We had 5 really, really nice guys. They may not have been the best musicians. See, everybody worries about that. They may not have been the best musicians, but they were the right people at the time to sell 60 million records.
What's amazing about it is that the band just was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the hit songs you had, I mean, just the way it was recorded, everything kind of like just was alignment. The stars were aligned at so many levels.
Definitely, because, you know, we were like the Sex Pistols, only we didn't have a plan. And the plan originally was, we'll get good enough to get a song on the radio. That's all. Not make $1 million. We'll get so good that we'll go on the radio. And, you know, and this is something for everybody who thinks that might be something worthwhile. If you get on the radio, if you're 14, 15 and you listen to the radio in my period, maybe now as well, you heard Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley, and you go, well, if I get on the radio, I'll be with Roy Orbison and Dion and the Four Seasons and the Beatles and the Stones, and that's all we cared about. And with that, of course, once you get on the radio, you say, wouldn't it be great if it got in the charts? Wouldn't it be great if it got in the charts in Germany? Hey, wouldn't it be really great if it got on the charts in America? Because we always wanted to go to America because that's where music came from.
The songs were all uplifting. They were happy. They were fun. Listen, when I was younger and I heard the band, it was just so great. The songs were great to play. They had a good feel. They had a great message. So who was doing some of the writing in the band? You
know what happened in those days? Most people recorded their set list. That's how it was. The Stones' first album is, you know, You Better Move On. It's Arthur Alexander songs. The Beatles got Miracle songs. We had all those pop songs. We had a Buddy Holly song and a couple of songs that we'd written, and Sea Cruise and songs from our set list at the Cavern. And when you played the Cavern, you had to have a different set list from everyone else. We called it repertoire because the set list was something that Americans invented. But we had a thing called a repertoire, which was, 100 songs. You couldn't have Roll Over Beethoven in there because the Beatles did it so good that everybody left it alone. You couldn't have an Elvis Presley song in there because nobody did Elvis Presley songs. You couldn't do a Four Seasons song because nobody could do a Four Seasons song. You just couldn't physically do it. Let's hang on to. So we had all songs that I could sing and that I could make my own, like Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter, and Henry VIII, and I'm Leaning on a Lamppost, and Wonderful World by Sam Cooke, and Silhouettes, which was the Rays. Only when we did it, took a walk and past your house, late, like F, D minor, like a really boring version. And we were in the studio, and this guy called Vic Flick, who was in the John Barry 7. Vic Flick is this famous guitar player in England. He played, in the Beatles, That Boy Took My Love Away. It's called Ringo's theme, but he's the guitar player on that. The Beatles didn't play it. He did. Down, 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 down. He came up with the lick. Same thing with I'm Into Something Good. We're in the studio and we try. This is ridiculous, but we were pretty naive. We thought we were making a surf record. We kept saying it's not surfing. Well, surfing, like took my love, surfing. So this guy, Roger Webb, he had the Roger Webb Trio, and they were a BBC jazz thing. They did Phil, Mickey Mouse says, "Hey Roger, what is surf sound?" And he goes, "Well, let me see. Is it this?" And he started to play this jazz riff. We played along with it, and that is the feel. And it is a surf sound. It's Brian Wilson's favorite record. I was telling you, when you played the Cavern, you had to have different songs. So we had My Boy Lollipop, Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter. Not that we did the best version of My Boy Lollipop, but no other boys in Liverpool would sing My Boy Lollipop. They wouldn't do it. And I didn't care, who cares what people think? It's a good song, it's a ska. And we didn't have any songs like that, so we did it. Same with Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter. The Beatles would never sing this. And the same with My Boy Lollipop and Sea Cruise. And then we needed another one of those. And now we've got hits in the charts. So we were looking for songs to record for the album. And we do Henry VIII, which we remembered. I'm Henry VIII, I am. Everybody's granddad knows that song. It's from 1912, Harry Champion. It's in their period of our grandparents' period of life. I say in the recording, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I say second verse, same as the first, which is a big band thing, It's a pure big bass. It could have been do, wackadoo, 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 do, wackadoo, wackadoo, which is space here. And when you say second verse, same as the first, it means play what we just played again. It doesn't mean it's nothing to do with the words. It means play the verse. Second verse, play it the same as the first. So everybody got that. And then you shout bridge and, then guitar solo. We used to shout that out. So the record is, I think, the shortest record ever to get to number one. It's like 1 minute, 37 seconds. That's how long it took to make. It was never take two.
It seems like because of how young you guys were and how you just had this frivolous attitude that you just wanted to play music, that seemed to really work to your advantage.
Krishnamurti once said, and I disagreed at the time, more information equals more confusion. I think people try to work out all the ways that you can make something work to the point that it's impossible to make it. It's like giving all the royalties away to have a hit. People used to do that joyfully. People said, all those artists like us and like the Animals, they wanted to make a record. Nobody cared how much you were getting. 10 years later, you go, where's the money? Where's the money? But in fact, we would have all done it for nothing. Nobody read those contracts. We got our dads. No lawyer in England had seen a recording contract. So what chance did our dad have to make a good choice? Yeah. But it's all in the past, And I think in the music business, you've got to always, like my dad, you've always got to be working on the next bit of income. If you keep looking backwards at that thing with royalties, I'm really happy. My wife thinks it's hilarious because I get a check for $9 from Uganda. And I dance around the kitchen because in my way of thinking, this might not be good for your students, but in my way of thinking, if I'd have been a plumber 55 years after I fixed Mrs. Wiggins' sink, she wouldn't be paying me a royalty. She'd still be complaining.
That's a good point. That's a very, very good point. But, it's kind of interesting. The band went on 60 million recordings, 14 gold singles, and 7 gold albums. I mean, that's fantastic.
We were really good. Music is a momentary thing of joy. It has its moments. And we just showed up without any plan at exactly the right moment. It was exactly that there was this British invasion thing going on in America, and I had refused to sing with an American accent. So Mrs. Brownie got a lovely daughter, jumped, Henry VIII, all those ones where I was using my English accent. It was all England, swings like a pendulum do, times a billion. Yeah. And we played on that when we did the Dean Martin show and the Ed Sullivan Show. We played on the fact that we were English. We were very proud to be British.
What was that like? Here you are, that young, you come to America, and the Ed Sullivan Show was the biggest show on Sunday night at 9:00 that everyone, 70, 80 million people watched it back at that time. What was that like to go on there and experience this level of intensity and excitement?
First of all, we had a great amount of respect for Ed Sullivan because he was a good guy. He didn't try and join in the skits or anything. He just announced people from Samoa, the Samoans. That was it. And we had great respect for him because we'd heard about the show, and the Beatles had done it and the Four Seasons had done it, and anything that the Four Seasons had done we thought was probably okay because they were cool. And we showed up and he was very respectful of us because we were a bunch of kids. I mean, we didn't deserve any respect from anybody. We were a bunch of kids. He was very respectful, and it was great because once we went on it and we did Henry VIII, and we went back to the hotel, and it was this, I can remember these things like, it's very bizarre. It was the City Square in New York on Lexington Avenue, and there was a parking lot, and you could stand on the roof of the parking lot and look at the street. And without an exaggeration, there were thousands of girls. We did the Ed Sullivan Show. We went back to the hotel. There were thousands of girls in the street, all singing Henry VIII over and over and over and over and over again, which is a great memory. But the best part of the memory is I'm standing next to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and they've got satisfaction. I've heard it. They've got satisfaction in the thing. Yeah. And I can make fun of them. They were always, the Stones always took the piss out of everybody, made fun of everybody. That was their whole thing. It still is. So I was able to take the piss. I said, don't you wish you'd done a song with an English accent now? Because I can't get no Jack. Just for fun. And so I was standing there, and Andrew Oldham was there, and Keith and Mick. And on the other side, it was Tom Jones. And Tom Jones's manager, Gordon Mills, who I didn't like. I liked everyone else on the roof, but I didn't like Gordon Mills. I don't know why, I just didn't like him. He said to Tom, "That is the power of television." And I wanted to say, no, that's the power of a great song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And perhaps having a cute lead singer who gave all the all that stuff that I just did naturally. I had no talent other than being cute.
So here you are now, you're in America, you're on the Ed Sullivan Show, you're doing the Jackie Gleason Show, another huge show, Dean Martin, Danny Kaye television program. I mean, these are huge legends that you're meeting. What was that like?
Well, I still wanted to meet Johnny Cash and Elvis. I still was more interested in meeting, I was more interested in hopefully one day meeting Marvin Gaye than I was in meeting Dean Martin. Just strange stuff, I wanted to meet Johnny Cash. I wanted to meet Elvis. I'd met Roy Orbison really early on, and I'd met the Everly Brothers before I made it. And they were really nice and friendly and gentlemanly. So I said, that's where I'm going to play it, like that. I'm going to have to be charming. And when there's people waiting at the stage door, I'm going to have to say, oh, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the show, all that stuff. You know what I mean? So I like Jackie Gleason. I kind of watched his show, and I knew he was a good guy. And he invited us to his house in Miami. That's what happened. You see, we were this boy next door band. So when we did the Dean Martin show, he invited to his house. And we went to Dean's house, you know, a couple of us. Not everyone wanted to go. You know, it's a weird band. Some people missed. They didn't get up in time to meet Elvis, and they didn't want to go and see Dean Martin. And so a couple of us went over there, and we met his son. Dean Martin's son had a band called Dino, Desi, and Billy, and a friend, who's still a friend now, and a guy called Jimmy Connors was there playing with you know, Dino, Desi, and Billy. He was friends with Dino. So some of my lifetime friends I met, and Dean Martin took us to his house, and he had a daughter called Dina, and we had dinner with him and his wife, and it was like quite big deal. Jackie Gleason, we bought 5 times 30 bottles of booze on the plane. You're allowed to bring 5/5. It was a customs and duty thing. In England, you could buy 5/5 of booze. And we didn't know what he drank. So all 6 of us, you know, the manager as well, the 5 guys in the band and the manager all bought 5 bottles of booze from different things. And we showed up at his house. He lived in Miami. We showed up in his mouth, and we're coming out with the limo with all this, with 30 bottles of booze, right? And his wife runs out and she goes, no. He's just joined AA. And he was he made us laugh. He made us feel like he pretended he knew who we were. Do you know what I mean? It was really marvelous.
So the band is traveling. You're traveling all throughout the U.S. You're performing. You're experiencing the audiences. How was the band developing at that time? Were you all getting along? Was it all kind of working out well?
They were much better at getting along than I was, because I was too young to be the boss. And I hadn't learned how not to hurt people's feelings, because I thought that feelings were not counted. So, you know, when example, like we do this record, Wonderful World, it came about in a weird way because Sam Cooke had been killed in Los Angeles, and Mickey called me, and he was in the studio, and they were doing Bring It On Home to Me with Eric Burden. No Animals, just Eric Burden. And it's Bring It On Home to Me, yeah. We're doing a tribute to Sam Cooke. So I said, let's do Cupid. You know, Cupid, drop back your bow. It'd be a great song for Herman. He goes, no. Think of this. Don't know much about history. Don't know much about biology. It's your song, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I go, okay. He says, get in there. Jimmy Page has got an idea. So Jimmy Page is the guitar player. And then we put the record out, and the Hermits say, what's all this about? It's a record. We weren't even told there was a session. And I go, I said, and you know what, Lek, by the time we do it live, you'll be able to play it better than Jimmy, which is true, you know, because Jimmy Page only played it twice. You know, when you go on the road, you always play your stuff better than you did on the record. That was the wrong thing to say, you know, and I didn't know that I'd hurt his feelings and that was going to be there all the time. Yeah. And frequently that would happen. I thought because we shared all the money evenly and they got paid on records even if they weren't there, that was a way not to hurt the feelings. But remember, they were musicians, and the easiest thing to hurt in a musician is you either trap his fingers in a door or you hurt his feelings.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting point. So business-wise, were you guys making money? Was it organized? Were you saving money? How were you guys reacting with all this fame?
The newspapers in England would have like headlines. You know, we'd sign a record deal in America for $1 million. And, was lifetime, they would give us $1 million. And then it would say in England, no mention of the Hermits, it would say, Herman, the luckiest millionaire, as if I'd got the whole million in the bank.
Interesting.
And of course, as everyone knows, my mum and dad believed that I had the million. And they wanted to help me spend it. So, once you're in a band, it's really easy to spend money because it's a fashion show. Even though Hermits hated fashion, we thought that music and fashion were mortal enemies. Because it seemed that everybody suited up for the moment. Do you know what I mean? It always seemed like everybody's wearing suits. Everybody's got a tuxedo. So we just always kind of moved around from not being fashionable. The minute people start talking about money, is really the end of it. Where's the money? There's all that stuff goes on because remember, you aren't married to guys in a band. You're in business together, but there's this magical camaraderie, loyalty that exists only in a musical group. It could be a great big band, like my dad had this great big band with people standing all over the place. And when it's my turn, when am I getting a solo? But there was still this sort of magical camaraderie about the sharing of music and playing it as an ensemble, playing it together. You know, you can play all day at home with a track. Yeah, I'm really good at this. But the minute you get a band around you, you have to up the game. You know, it's time to up the game.
So now you go on, the band disbands in 1971, but you go on to record some more singles in the UK with RAK Records. So you continued on a whole different career path now.
Everyone was doing it at the same time. Like Eric Burdon, who's the same period. We're all from the same period. Eric Burdon now becomes Eric Burdon and the Animals. Diana Ross becomes Diana Ross and the Supremes. Herman's Hermits become Peter Noone and Herman's Hermits. The Four Seasons and Frankie Valli. The Grassroots with Roger. It suddenly they start to take the lead singer because they think it's going to be like Cliff Richards and the Shadows or Wesley and the Jordanaires. There'll be two completely, the record company would line up, two careers. Nobody ever successfully did it. Yeah. Because I think people want the Stones to stay together and do more of Stones. They don't want to have a Mick Jagger solo thing. And he's made some fantastic records, but no one ever buys them because they don't want him to make it on his own. They want the Stones to keep going. Yeah. So the same thing happened with Herman's Hermits. I struggled. What happened was it was time for us to sort of have two separate careers because I was working more and more as Peter Noone. I'd got a TV series on my own. They didn't want the Hermits. I had to just take it. I'm now Peter Noone every week, and the show is the number one show in England. And the Hermits are kind of, what should we do? So I said, well, Mickey says, well, let's make you make a solo record. You make a Hermits record. And so they go off to make their record. And David Bowie shows up at our office, Mickey Most of my office, and he has this great song called Oh You Pretty Things. And I say, that should be Herman's Hermits' next single. And Mickey Most says, no, that should be Peter Noone's first solo single. David Bowie says, yeah, that's a good idea. So we go over the studio and we find out that David Bowie can only play the song in F sharp. He only can play the black notes on the piano. It's one of those idiosyncrasies that I go, okay, I can't play it in F sharp. No one can play it in F sharp. You know, we think, well, we'll call Billy, you know, and Billy, nobody can play it in F sharp. It's just too complex. So David says, well, I can play it once in F sharp. I can't keep going after one turnaround because it's too hard. You know, dun, 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 for 10 minutes. So we said, okay, do it once and we'll record it and we'll put it together. By then, you could edit tapes. You know, there's no more live recording. So we edit the tape and we put the three pieces together. Then he writes a little bit for the middle and we do a production. And then stupidly, we keep adding stuff to it. It was great at the beginning. We keep adding stuff. There's violins come in and everything because Mickey thinks he now wants to do Wall of Sound. It just got more and more stuff added on it. It was a massive hit in Europe. It was a massive hit by me. And I still get a check every month from that one. I go, whoa, people still playing that, buying that one and YouTubing it and stuff. It's great. And David Bowie showed up on Top of the Pops. Back then, you see, you got the kit behind you. You couldn't do Top of the Pops and use the track if you didn't have the original players with you in the thing. So we had Tony Wilson, who was a black guy from Hot Chocolate playing bass. We had David Bowie playing the piano. He chose to wear a dress for the first time on television that day. And Peter Noone, Herman from Herman's Hermits, the lead singer, and Ariel Bender playing guitar. So it's this, now we got Mott the Hoople, Hot Chocolate, Herman's Hermits, and David Bowie in a band on television. And nobody can find the tape.
What an incredible story. So you went on in 1989. In 1989, you had a number 19 U.S. hit solo recording with Goffin and King's I'm Into Something Good.
What happened was that somebody wanted to make it. They were making Naked Gun.
Right.
And the two boys who were the producers and writers of Naked Gun had owned that record when they were children, and their dad only let them play that record at home, and It's Impossible by Perry Como. So they wanted to use I'm Into Something Good in the movie, and they asked Alan Klein for the rights to do it. And he asked for millions of dollars, which he always did. And they said, we can't do that. So they called me and they said, do you think you could do like a facsimile of that? I said, yeah. So we went in the studio in LA and I worked it out with some guys there. And we did like a really close version to the original. And they listened to it and they said, we can't use this because it's too close to the original. It's Alan Klein will think this is the original because you still sound exactly the same. So I said, well, we'll change the guitar solo. We won't use a guitar in the middle or a piano. We'll use like I think it was called a Moog synthesizer.
Yeah.
I think it's back then. We slapped that all over it and it went out and it was a hit. I couldn't believe it was a hit because it had sold a couple of million records the first time and it never goes away. It's in all these Disney movies.
It sounds like you have and continue to have an exciting life. Your personality comes out as you speak in all that you do. And you've continued to go on. In the 80s, you released a solo album in 1980, one of the Glory Boys.
Yeah.
You kept going on and pumping these things out and experimenting and pushing yourself.
Well, you know what? After a while, pushing all that thing, a couple of years ago, I decided that what I really do well is live shows. And I put all my eggs in the live show basket just as they called off all the live shows. But I got 118 that have been booked that keep getting moved and moved and moved. And I think I used to say to my agent every time I made a phone call, this is nonsense, but listen to it. It's like from the Jesuit upbringing I had. I used to say to him, 10 more years, Howie, are you okay with that? 10 more years of booking dates. And, you can book me 10 more years and I'll be okay with that. And recently I've changed that to 11 more years, Howie. I like live. I truly enjoy. When I made those records, I sang live, there was a story. I was singing to somebody. Mickey Most used to say these words. I'd go, Mrs. Brown, and he'd go, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Because he also believed that every story had to be sung to somebody. There's something in that, you know what I mean? And that when you heard Dion saying that he was the type of guy who likes to wander around, goes from town to town, I'm never in one place, I'm the wanderer. If you didn't believe it, you're an idiot.
So now you go on Sirius XM, 60s, something good. You're playing music, you're talking about it. What an exciting program.
It is good because I get to tell stories and I found something weird. The playlist is probably 300, 400, 500 songs total.
Yeah.
I know something about every one of those songs. I know someone in it, someone on it, or someone with it. And that is a great treasure. I'm a treasure trove of information about a period. It's like I know the Beatles and I know the Bee Gees and I know the record producer from that and I know the guys in that band and I met the guys in that band and there's hardly anybody that I didn't meet. There's quite a few people that I did meet and didn't like. There's a few of them, not many. But I've been very lucky, because I've had an opportunity to meet lots and lots and lots of great people in my life. Lots. Yeah. And I can tell the story. And, the people I don't like, I say things like this. My mom told me if I don't have anything nice to say about somebody, don't say anything at all. So and then I play the record by that person. And I don't say anything.
The message was delivered for sure.
I hope so.
Peter, in closing, we've got, people that are out there that are in the music industry that are passionate about their music. And as they hear your story and they hear your passion and your drive and your incredible endless enthusiasm, what would you say to them in closing to give them some advice that they can pursue their dreams and live the life of being in music from the core of their passion? I
think you've got to start at the very bottom. And they say it's lonely at the top and it's very busy at the bottom. And if you start at the bottom and every gig that you do after that, you refer to the bottom and go on stage and be in gratitude that you finally got to the better stage. It doesn't matter if the worst place I ever played was the Cavern because it was such a nasty in and out with the gear. But I refer to it on stage all the time and I go, look where you got. And I still use all the same information I learned at the Cavern. You know, if you played gigs at the high school, I was in the Mikado at high school and they didn't give me a lead role. I was one of the background singers and I had a resentment because they hadn't put me in the front row. You know, 3 little maids from school, are we? I wasn't one of the 3 little maids. So I didn't enjoy it. But I use that on stage. I go, you know, this is so much better. Look, and also watch every band that you play with. If you're in a band, go out in the audience and watch the other people on stage. You may not learn something to do, but you'll learn loads of things not to do. I've never been on a show where I haven't watched every other entertainer on the show. I did a show in Wembley Pool, 1965. Beatles, Stones, Yardbirds, Cliff Richards and the Shadows, Gene Pitney, everybody was on that show. And the Beatles loaned us their gear because we had a left-handed bass player. Nobody does that. You have to remember that that's what it's all about. There was a magical camaraderie among musicians and everybody else was out of the picture. If you allow the fashion people in it, that's not going to be good. Musicians have to have a unique bond. Entertainers, people who go on stage have to realize whether they're actors, singers, dancers, players, but they all have a unique bond where you need each other to make it work. Yeah. And you always got to remember you need each other. But every situation that you get in, you have to refer to the bottom where you started. All that stuff is all relevant and it's all useful forever.
Boy, well said, Peter. So well said. You know, Herman's Hermits was a positive message. It was uplifting. It made people feel good. And you were that voice that delivered that message. Really very, very powerful.
It was a great little ensemble. You know, Mickey Most was a great record producer. He wasn't a great engineer, but he was a great record producer. The whole thing was of the moment, remember? And I keep that moment alive by playing live gigs, and it makes people happy to relive that moment. And perhaps you'd be 16 years old. A lot of people come to the show, they're 16 years old, and they say, oh, I get it now. I get the 60s now.
Well, what an incredible message. Well, Pete, it is fantastic to have you here. It is wonderful to hear the story. I want people to listen to it and take in the fact that you were really a part of music history. You really were a very, very integral part. By knowing everybody and by being involved with everybody, this was an exciting time, and you explained that excitement beautifully.
It was an exciting time, and, you know, a lot of great people wandered around the planet during that time.
They were there, they created history, and you were right in the thick of it. Peter Noone, thank you so much for your time. The Artist Series at a Distance. Thank you so much. Enjoy, stay well, and stay safe.
Thank you, Dom. Nice salute to you too. Bye. Thank you very much.
Dom Famularo here, the Sessions panel. This is so exciting. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Click the subscribe button to be a part of what we're doing. The views help us tremendously. All of your comments, we read them and react to them. This is incredible. The support you're giving us is great. The Sessions panel. We'll see you real soon.